From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. United States sanctions on Venezuela are not new, but this year the administration of President Donald Trump has taken much more aggressive steps to limit economic activities and block Venezuela's ability to make payments. And the impact on ordinary citizens is being felt more and more. We have more in this report.
Experts have said the economic blockade started around 2013, when credit rating agencies started increasing the figures of Venezuelan risk, starting at 726 points and reaching 5,595 points in May 2018, a higher number than those given to countries fighting wars. This makes it increasingly difficult to ask for international credit to invest in the country and to control foreign debt. On April 24th, a worldwide campaign was started to condemn economic sanctions against Venezuela by the U.S.
The value of their investments.
These resources are for the people, for food, health and public services, for housing and infrastructure. What the U.S. government is doing is a criminal act.
These statements have been supported by the United Nations, which has warned about the negative impact of unilateral sanctions imposed by the U.S.
Regime change through economic measures likely to lead to the denial of basic human rights and indeed possibly to starvation, has never been an accepted practice of international relations. Political differences between governments must never be resolved by precipitating economic and humanitarian disasters, making ordinary people pawns and hostages thereof.
Venezuela has over $4.5 billion currently blocked in various international banks. On top of that, there are multiple sanctions against Venezuelan banks and a ban on operating in dollars placed on the Central Bank of Venezuela. Adding to this, the blockade against public company Citgo, located in the U.S., the total of frozen funds comes to over $30 billion.
Medicine and food are both with $4,000 billion a year. So the total figure of stolen funds represent almost 7 years of medicine and food for all Venezuelan citizens. But there is a huge damage being done to our currency too, generating hyperinflation. We estimate that this adds to $114 billion in losses for the Venezuelan people.
The strategy by the U.S. of imposing collective sanctions affects the country's entire budget.
They are going to create pressure from the inside to generate economic and social destabilization. They have said that they are going to accelerate the collapse. Trump said that worse things are coming, so we need to be ready. We need to be especially careful with internal threats.
In order to overcome the blockade, Venezuela is going to work to diversify its international allies and strengthen national production.
Supporters of right-wing opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido are continuing to harass the collective protecting Venezuela's embassy in Washington, D.C. International NGO Code Pink tweeted that their afternoon press conference was disrupted by Guaido supporters who used air horns to disrupt their discussions with members of the media. This comes after U.S. authorities cut power to the building last night. The embassy has been the location for a tense standoff between the Embassy Protection Collective and Guaido supporters. The Venezuelan government has authorized the collective to protect the embassy, while opposition groups have been preventing basic commodities like food, medicine from entering the building. With close to 69% of the votes from South Africa's general elections counted, the ruling African National Congress has maintained its lead. The latest result, announced by the Elections Commission, puts the ANC at 56.5%, while the opposition Democratic Alliance stands at 23%. The economic freedom fighters have moved from 8% to 9.8% of the votes. Final results are expected to be announced on Saturday. However, the Electoral Commission has announced that it will be able to declare 90% of election results by 10 p.m. Thursday, local time.
We have captured 44.17% of all all voting stations, and those have been audited and the results declared. The remaining 55% of the results we hope to conclude sometime during the course of the morning tomorrow. However, 90% of all voting stations should be declared by about 10 p.m. tonight.
The Electoral Commission has also announced the arrest of 19 individuals for allegedly voting twice. A representative of the commission said they had been arrested in the KwaZulu-Natal province. He, however, said the few instances of double voting will not affect the final results of the election. Wednesday's elections in South Africa saw the lowest voter turnout since 1994, when Nelson Mandela was elected as the country's first black president, raising questions about voter apathy. Earlier, we were joined by political analyst Richard Peethouse, who discussed the topic.
For South Africa, that is a low voter turnout, and it's not uniformly low. Voters in the suburbs, more middle-class voters and more white voters, voted at a much higher rate than voters in working-class black areas, which I think most people would read as a sign of a certain degree of alienation from not just the ruling party, but from many of the possibilities on offer in the election. The new president of the ruling party, the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has reinvigorated support for the party to some degree. Not enough to enable a mass turnout from the party's original base, but he certainly has arrested some of that decline. But nonetheless, the decline is still, as a long-term trend, clearly in place. And the reasons for it, I don't think, are surprising. There's rampant corruption. The ANC has become increasingly repressive against people organized independently from the party and engaged in different kinds of struggles. And it's completely failed to meet its social commitments around things like employment, providing decent accommodation for the majority, and so on.
In Argentina, gunmen have killed a government official and seriously injured a lawmaker just outside Congress. Police say unknown assailants shot dead Marcelo Yadon, who worked at the Electric Transportation Trust Fund. Congressman Héctor Olivares was wounded twice and rushed to a hospital. Investigators are examining the crime scene, searching for clues about the attackers. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, gives us more details.
Lawmaker Héctor Olivares was shot close to the Congress building at 6:55 a.m. A public worker that was with him was killed in the shooting. Olivares was transferred to a hospital, where he remains in a critical condition. The reasons for the attack are still unknown. What we know is that two people in a car were waiting for the victims. They were shot, and then the men ran away. On Wednesday, the lawmaker participated in a debate about the approval of a law to eliminate violence in football. But beside that, there are no clues that point to why the victims were attacked. The attack happened near Congress by men who were waiting for the lawmaker, so it does not appear to be a common robbery case.
We thank Edgardo for that report. Nicaragua's Attorney General has resigned due to health problems. The resignation of Hernán Estrada comes as the government trues to advance talks with the opposition and amid mounting U.S. sanctions. This is the third high-profile resignation in Nicaragua in the last 6 months after a top Supreme Court judge resigned as well. Estrada had served as the country's Attorney General since President Daniel Ortega came to power in 2007. Moving on, Peruvian workers have rallied for a second day of an indefinite strike to protest against salary cuts. More than 4,000 workers of the National Documents Registry gathered in front of the Labor Ministry in Lima. They were joined by labor unions from an international mining company who are demanding better labor conditions. Workers say that the government is not fulfilling previous labor agreements, so workers could be affected by cuts of up to 40% in their salaries. Our correspondent in Peru, Jaime Herrera, explains more.
There have been several protests here in front of the Labor Ministry in Lima. Firstly, the workers of the National Registration of Documents Office are on the second day of an unlimited strike. They are demanding no cuts to their salaries, cuts that are up to 40% of their current salaries. But also, a group of mining company workers has arrived here to protest against the company they work for, which is not fulfilling its agreements with workers. We are with one of those leaders, Mr. Tamaro, so he can explain why they are protesting.
We are here to protest against the labor conditions of the transnational mining company Glencore. We have came to protest for different reasons. First, the company has not paid us our annual bonus since 2012. We are also protesting the food conditions in the different locations. We get frozen food that hurts our bodies. We're also demanding the company enact security measures.
How are the workers facing these conditions?
In the last month, we have had about 15 people poisoned. There have been several reports from hospitals that prove it. We have told the company, but we have not received any answers or solutions, even though we've opened to dialogue with them. We are tired of the situation, so we got together and came here to the capital Lima to find a solution through the Labor Ministry.
And we will continue to keep you updated on the situation of the workers who are protesting here today.
Thank you, Jaime, for that report. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Former Brazilian President Michel Temer has handed himself over to authorities less than 24 hours after a court ordered him back to jail. On Wednesday, an appeals court revoked Temer's writ of habeas corpus under which he was freed mere days after his original arrest. The court gave Temer until 5 p.m. local time to turn himself in. The former president was arrested on March 21st for money laundering and corruption accusations as part of the Lava Jato investigation. A Brazilian public security analyst warns that the decree which loosens gun rules could put public and national security at risk. The decree signed by President Jair Bolsonaro last Tuesday eases restrictions on gun import and increases the amount of ammunition a person can buy.
What we can expect for sure is an increase in the number of homicides, and more than this, it will be easier for arms to reach the hands of organized crime or criminals. It will open more illegal channels. It fragilizes gun control by reducing all the state inspection mechanism, and on the other side, it widens weapon access. So in these two ways, the decrease goes against public security objectives.
A solidarity brigade from Brazil's landless workers movement is on its way to Mozambique to help local organizations rebuild after several cyclones hit in March and April. Our correspondent, Andre Vieira, is traveling with them.
We are at the Florestan Fernandes School of the Brazilian Landless Workers Movement, or MST. This is where an international solidarity brigade has been preparing to travel to Mozambique.
They called on us for humanitarian assistance, and that's very good. I'm keen to get there.
Firstly, internationalism has always been a priority for our movement. And secondly, we just want to help our brothers and sisters in that country.
I'm very anxious to arrive there. There are a lot of things we can do to help, and they will also contribute to our struggle here.
13 campesinos from the MST and 6 health workers will join forces with the Mozambican organizations ADECO and UNAC to help with the rebuilding of the country after the cyclones earlier this year. More than donations, they are taking with them their ideals.
We want to talk to the local communities there about agroecology and help strengthen their food sovereignty.
We want to bring down the artificial borders that we have created. The idea that they are a long way away, that people on the other side of the world are different. I think I'll be able to dismantle many of those ideas.
We'll get to see the reality there, all the destruction from the cyclones. It will be an incredible experience as a militant and as a human being.
The MST currently has permanent brigades in Venezuela, Haiti, Zambia and Cuba. And from that Caribbean island has come the inspiration for this gesture of solidarity.
We have learned a lot from Cuba and its international struggle. They've been bringing solidarity to many continents. They still are. And that has taught the MST that the struggle is not just for land, but for education, health, and to build these international links between people.
With the first phase of preparation completed, the Brigade of Health Workers and Campesinos will be setting off for Mozambique to put into practice the internationalism that has always been a basic principle of the landless movement. Andre Vieira and Sebastián Soto, Telesur, at the Florestan Fernandez School in Sao Paulo.
The government of Jamaica will take appropriate measures to bring the perpetrators of crimes against children to justice. Last year alone, close to 13,000 child abuse cases were reported to the island's Child Protection and Family Services Agency.
We'll do everything in our powers to ensure that those who commit these heinous crimes are brought to justice, that every case that is brought to our attention of abuse will be thoroughly investigated, and those who are accountable will be brought to book. The government of Jamaica in no way subscribes to or is ambivalent about the socio-cultural issues that still continue to support the basis on which some of our men in particular rely on to abuse our children. These things must be wiped away from our culture.
The Senate committee in charge of analyzing the documents of Haiti's Prime Minister Jean-Michel Lapin and his cabinet has postponed the ratification of ministerial appointments. The commission did not receive the full composition of the new government in time. There are also reports that names were also missing for the ministries of tourism and defense. So far, no date has been agreed for the new session, and experts suggest that the proposed government could still change. The International Court of Justice could finally resolve the border dispute between Belize and Guatemala that has dragged on for hundreds of years. Results of Wednesday's ICJ referendum held in Belize indicated that the yes vote won. Over 65% of Belize's electorate participated in the historic national referendum. Guatemalans have already voted in favor of going to the top UN court to settle the territorial dispute.
The total number of ballot papers counted is 96,417. Total votes cast for yes is 53,388. The total votes cast for no is 43,029. As a result, the majority of voters in the entire country have approved the proposition for the referendum on the territorial disputes.
Sudan's Rapid Support Forces have seized 241 kilograms of gold from a plane that landed in Khartoum. The plane had departed from the Nile River state. According to authorities, only 93 of the 241 kilograms had been cleared for export. The name of a Moroccan company which was exporting the gold has not yet been made public, only that it is legally registered to operate in Sudan. Investigations are being carried out into possible smuggling.
In an operation in the Nile River state, after trying to leave the country and smuggle all its resources, around 241 kilograms of gold has been seized. The manufacturing company is a Moroccan investment company. Only 93 kilograms of that amount was supposed to arrive yesterday in order to be exported abroad.
A British man convicted of being in possession of bomb-making materials in Kenya has been sentenced to 4 years in prison. In 2011, Germain Grant was arrested after being found in possession of chemicals and other equipment used to make bombs. Grant was convicted last month but was acquitted of conspiracy to carry out a terror attack. He is already serving 9 years in prison following a conviction in 2015 for fraud. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pope Francis has issued a landmark decree that makes bishops directly accountable for sexual abuse or cover-ups. Priests and nuns are now obliged to report any cases of abuse within the church, even in countries where civic law wouldn't oblige them to do so. The papal decree also orders every Catholic district in the world to set up accessible reporting systems. It also sets time limits for local investigations and the Vatican's response to them. Two French human rights groups tried to block weapons from being loaded onto a Saudi Arabian vessel, claiming the cargo contravened an international arms treaty. An online investigative site had published leaked French military intelligence that showed weapons sold to the kingdom were being used against civilians in Yemen's war. France is one of Saudi Arabia's main arms suppliers, but the government has faced increasing pressure to stop weapons sales because the four-year-old war has created one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Spain's current Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has met with the leaders of the country's three main political parties as he moves to form a government. This follows his win of the general election on April 28th.
Although Sanchez and his Spanish Workers' Socialist Party won the most seats in Spain's general election, their victory falls short of a majority needed to take outright control of the government. Now he and his party will have to try to form a new government with the support of other parties. And while it's public knowledge that Sanchez and leader of the People's Party, Pablo Casado, do not agree, Casado was the first to visit the Moncloa Palace. Casado said the government will be weak, while its opposition will be strong. He added that he will not support the Prime Minister's presidential inauguration.
I told him not to depend on the pro-independence parties, because Spain does not depend on those who do not believe in unity and the equality of all citizens.
The following day, Sanchez met with the leader of the Citizens' Party, Albert Rivera, who offered him pacts on issues such as migration and education. However, Rivera said he will not support his inauguration as Prime Minister, adding that they could only agree on matters relative to recovering control of Catalan institutions.
I offered Sanchez a helping hand. I gave him the 55 seats belonging to the Citizens' Party in the parliament, and if necessary, the Serenos can apply the Article 155, also known as the nuclear option, in Catalonia.
The meeting demonstrated the ongoing war between the two right-wing parties. They both want to present themselves as leaders of the opposition. Casado asked Rivera to abstain from voting, so Sanchez will not be able to make a pact with the pro-independence parties. Rivera responded by attacking the electoral results of Casado's Popular Party.
I am more concerned about Spanish citizens and our role as the opposition than for the internal crisis that the Popular Party has, or for its breakdown.
Left-wing party Unidas Podemos was the last to meet with Sanchez. Its leader, Pablo Iglesias, stressed that they have been able to build a relationship of mutual trust since the no-confidence motion that ended the conservative government of Mariano Rajoy. Iglesias also asked his voters to remain calm before future pacts with the government.
We've made our positions clear and we've agreed to form a consensus in order to move the process along. Our first meeting has been a very good one. I am optimistic about how things are going to be, but now we have to be cautious, discreet and calm.
The three meetings were more about image than a negotiation, since the formation of the government will have to wait for the regional and European elections, which take place on May 26th.
U.S. authorities have arrested a former intelligence analyst and charged him with providing classified information on drone warfare to a journalist. Former Air Force intelligence analyst Daniel Hale is set to appear in federal court on Thursday for providing top-secret documents from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency to a reporter at The Intercept in 2014. Hale faces 5 charges, each of which carry a maximum of 10 years imprisonment. His arrest comes as the U.S. is cracking down on whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The Chinese government has said they are fully prepared to defend their interests in the trade war with the U.S. This comes as a Chinese delegation led by Vice Premier Liu He is set to hold talks in Washington to save a trade deal. U.S. President Donald Trump also threatened to increase tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, going from 10 to 25% starting Friday. Russia is celebrating the 74th anniversary of Victory Day over Nazi Germany at the end of World War II with a massive military parade on Moscow's Red Square. President Vladimir Putin led the parade of over 13,000 troops. It also showcased the latest military hardware, including a new version of the Kalashnikov assault rifle. Other major cities also held their own parades. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.